Well, we made it to Friday, but unfortunately, it's Friday the 13th. Hopefully, it's not a bad Friday the 13th for anybody out there, but certainly if you've got to travel in some parts of the region, you do need to be careful today and over the weekend, as we do have a little bit of winter weather coming our way. We continue to see a pipeline of moisture coming off the Pacific into the Rockies. Boy, if you have a chance to take a look at satellite imagery, boy, you can really see this pipeline of moisture coming off the Pacific through Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, then pushing into the Central Rockies. It looks just like someone's got a garden hose pushing moisture into the region. This will continue to funnel in a significant amount of snow to the mountains of Idaho, Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming. The Snowy Range ski area picked up another 10 inches of snow, another 9 inches of snow at the Jackson Hole ski area. Snowpack conditions across many areas of Wyoming and Colorado are doing extremely well, with almost all the basins, with a few exceptions, above average, and will continue to grow with this pattern as the mountains will off and on, not continuously, but off and on have waves of snow and wind through the next 72 hours. If you are venturing into the high country this weekend, if you're a backcountry skier, if you're a backcountry snowmobiler, the snow is great. It's going to get even better, but be careful out there. Avalanche dangers across Colorado and Wyoming are way, way up. We've got a lot of snow loading because of the wind causing blowing and drifting snow, making the snow levels uneven, and that can make it very, very problematic and make it easy for snow slides to get going and avalanches. So if you're going to head to the backcountry this weekend and for the next couple of weekends, be careful out there. Now, the trend in the weather forecast is likely going to be a little tricky for the low elevations of Wyoming and Colorado and western Nebraska this weekend. This Pacific moisture that's getting pushed in is going to mix up with a Canadian cold front that's going to come in Saturday and Sunday. We're going to see 2 rounds of snow. The first round of snow will be developing in Wyoming's plains tonight and Saturday. We really don't expect a lot of snow out of this, but a lot of the low elevations of central and southern and eastern Wyoming will pick up about 1 to 3 inches of snow, along with falling temperatures Saturday through Saturday evening. So be prepared for that. That 1 to 2 to 3 inches will also get into the panhandle of Nebraska and far western South Dakota, while the mountains of Wyoming and the mountains of Colorado will just continue the snow factory. Then we're going to see a second area of snow developing across Colorado's plains into western Kansas during Saturday night late, but especially Sunday. We're going to see snow along the I-70 corridor of Colorado from near Denver, maybe up to Loveland, Fort Collins, down to Colorado Springs, Pueblo to Raton Pass, and then along I-70 into western Kansas Sunday into Sunday night. Again, that's not going to be a big storm, but several inches of snow will fall, and that's going to be a problem area for travel. Then Canadian air overspreads all areas Sunday into Monday, and it's going to be very cold. We see the snow ending both on the plains and in the mountains late Sunday, but it will get really cold. With fresh snow cover, we're at the shortest days of the year. We're looking at high temperatures Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, only 20s and 30s. Lots of single digits and teens. There'll be a few sub-zero temperatures. Early next week looks dry. In fact, we think most of next week looks dry. It's just that next week, the first half of the week is very cold. Now, we do see a warm-up coming during the second half of the week. For those of you that maybe want to travel or you have travel plans, late next week or next weekend, we've got a gap in the weather coming. We've got a high-pressure ridge coming in. So although next week starts off cold, the second half of the week and into next weekend gets warmer, kind of a little bit of a mid-December thaw coming, and a really good opportunity to travel that weekend before Christmas, because we do expect Christmas week to see winter weather return again. Now, there's a lot of disagreement in our long-range charts between the European model, the U.S. model, and the Canadian model and the Japanese model on the extent of the stormy weather and the cold weather that could develop Christmas week. It looks like basically from Thursday of next week through Monday the 23rd, that's the good gap in the weather. But on the Christmas Eve 24th time frame, all the way up into New Year's weekend, we see probably 2 separate troughs coming through that could bring snow and colder weather back to the region. Hopefully it's not going to interfere with Christmas time and Christmas travel, but it could. That's why if you have to travel, and if you can travel late next week and next weekend, that's the gap you want to take advantage of. One interesting thing to point out, we've talked about this at times, and we'll talk about it more. We talk about the solar activity and how it does affect our weather and climate. Here's one interesting tidbit that you'll not hear on the news anywhere. We have now gone 30 days in a row without a sunspot. When you don't have sunspot activity, that's a sure sign of a very inactive or a low activity sun. We are at the bottom, getting close to the bottom of a solar minimum. These happen every 11 years or so. What's interesting about our current solar minimum is that we've had 30 days of no sunspots. That's as long as we've gone this year. But we've got to go back to 2008, where we had 268 sunspotless days. And that 2008 solar minimum was the strongest since 1911. Now we are at 267 days of no sunspots during the year of 2019. So if we go 2 more sunspotless days before this year is over, it'll be a space age record. 2019 may have the lowest sunspot numbers in the last 100 years. Now, why is that significant? It's significant because there is compelling evidence that when there is a lack of sunspots and when we go into these solar minimums, we have more low cloud cover that forms over the oceans of the world, especially the Pacific Ocean, but also all the other oceans. You get these low stratostecks. For anybody that's flown over the oceans, and you see these long continuous layers of low clouds. Well, we tend to see more of these during solar minimums and shortly after solar minimums, because when the sun is not producing sunspots, the amount of cosmic rays that come from outer space increase. And when cosmic ray activity increases across the globe during these solar minimums and other astronomical events, low cloud cover over the oceans go up. What does that do? That actually makes the Earth colder. The reflective properties of those low clouds reflect the heat back into space so the Earth doesn't warm up as much. And how this impacts our climate is it's not immediate, but over time it makes the ocean basins colder and can have effect on long-term climate. It also has an impact we have seen in previous solar minimums. We tend to have more polar vortexes, we tend to have colder winters, and we tend to have more weather that can be, especially in the winter and spring seasons, a little bit more remarkable. There's also a strong connection in the western United States to solar minimums and the eventual development of La Niñas. And La Niñas in this part of the country lead to drought conditions. So we watch very closely the solar activity because it really can impact the weather here in the western United States and long-term climate trends. It has nothing to do with greenhouse gases. That's one reason why you don't hear about solar activity. It tends to be marginalized because it goes against the grain of a lot of theories and a lot of policy making that goes on right now. But I really do urge you to pay attention to solar activity, and in the coming months, especially as we go into 2020 and 2021, we're going to be watching those ocean basins and see whether or not they get colder. Right now, those ocean basins are pretty warm. Those ocean basins have produced several El Niños over the last 5 or 6 years, which indicates warmer than average water temperatures in the tropics. But we have seen a year or two after solar minimums, it's a slow process. We tend to go to La Niñas, and that is always a bad sign for the western United States, at least when it comes to precipitation. So I've gone on long here. I know this is a long podcast. Hopefully you've stuck with it. If not, thanks for listening. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk more about things like this. Solar minimums, solar maximums, sunspots. It's all terribly interesting. It's a little bit on the cutting edge of a lot of the science out there, but this is a very neglected part of our weather and climate picture. Solar activity has a bigger impact than one might imagine, but unfortunately, it's just not talked about, and it should be. Thanks for listening to the Day Weather Podcast. Have a great weekend.